Right, I think we're live. I'm just going to check my phone. So we'll do a few tech checks before I start doing welcomes, introductions, and cover a little bit. Perfect. So we look all good. Perfect. So I'm going to kick off because it looks like we've got a few people viewing, a few people jumping in now, and I can hear myself. Obviously, drop me an email if you've got any further questions you want me to respond to. I will keep a check on things as we're progressing through the live. But thank you for joining me. This is actually my first live of 2026. So thank you everyone for joining me, and thank you firstly for signing up for the 36 Industries Guide. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've had some great feedback so far, but hopefully I can answer your questions on this live call. And I'm going to walk you through some of the questions that have all been already raised to me in relation to it. So give me a few seconds. I'm just going to sort out my screen for my own benefit more than anything else. And then I'm going to do a little bit of an intro. You can see it's a half term here in the UK because I look pretty rugged from the kids being off from school. Not the best camera face for today. So let me do some introductions for those of you that may never have seen me live. You may know me, you may have spoke with me, we may have worked together in retail. You may have been following me for a number of years, so you might know a little bit about my backstory. So I'm Tom Harris, the retail escape specialist. And a little bit about my journey and how I came to be sitting here in front of your screen today is I started retail straight out of school. Had never done anything else. I ended up in retail because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I knew I had to get my act together and decide what I wanted to do, but I never knew what I wanted to do. Didn't go off to university as a result because I hadn't figured that out. So I thought, you know what, I'll get a part-time job at my local supermarket. So probably about 50% of my audience are from the States. So you may be watching this from the States. You may be watching this from various other places in the world. But I joined a supermarket called Sainsbury's here in the UK. You may have heard of them if you're not from the UK. Started as a part-time colleague on the hot chicken counter, funny enough. And probably like a lot of people, how they ended up in retail for many years. Thought I would try and figure out what I wanted to do with my career while I was earning a bit of money. But as time went on, it was a steady paycheck. I started to develop leadership skills, management skills that allowed me to step into my first management position as a supervisor, then up into department manager. Then I did a few regional roles and then became a store manager at that same supermarket. And by that time, 10 years had passed. I'd still not figured out anything that I wanted to do with my career. But by that point in time, I'd started in retail straight out of school, and now I'd made pretty much a career of it. And then I was in this kind of position where I felt stuck, and this might be a position where some of you feel right now. So I knew I wanted to do something different. I think what happens when we start in retail, if you followed the similar journey that I followed, where you joined retail at a very early age, what you wanted when you joined retail is very different to what you may want 10, 15, 20, 30 years later. And if you've done an extensive period of time in retail from a very early age, you are 100% going to be a different person. when I joined retail, or at least when I worked my way up into more senior manager positions, obviously it doesn't matter where you are in the world, any management position in retail involves long hours. You have to be flexible to the demands of your retail store. It's pretty relentless. You pretty much feel burnt out all the time. It is rewarding. You do meet loads of great people, and there is a lot of the whole team and people ethic is a key reason why most people probably stay longer than they should do. But as you change over the years, although the pay is good and the status that comes with it is pretty good as well, as you work throughout to store manager or more senior manager positions. You do become, you are that main person within store. That you should feel proud of being a store manager and the pay and the lifestyle that affords you with as well. But something's changed. You're a different person. 5, 10, 20 years has passed. What was important to you earlier in your career is likely very different now. So the crazy hours at work, maybe now you might have a family, you've likely got bills, things, just generally everything's going to cost a lot more because you've got more commitments in your life. Maybe that you've neglected a lot of things that were important to you, whether that is your family or whether that's hobbies or maybe health. So that same period of time in retail, a different person. Any different? No. So the issue, and this is where I find people reach this point, is that they've changed and retail is still retail. There is nothing wrong with retail. And if if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I am very grateful for the career that retail gave me, the skills that retail gave me. I wouldn't be here, be able to confidently talk to you to hundreds of people across the world without the people skills and the leadership skills that retail gave me throughout that period of time. But there's still that feeling that you feel stuck. You feel like, I want more work-life balance. I want these things. I want more, or I just want to change. Maybe there isn't an issue in terms of the lifestyle. Maybe you just like, I've done a period of time now, I just want to do something different. I'd like to explore what there is out there. And that's where retail managers feel stuck. They want to do something different, but they don't know how. And I find often it gets to a boiling point, and this is what happened to me. It got to the point where actually I started to get frustrated in my role, and it led to the point where I just felt ultimately dissatisfied. I felt burnt out. I felt tired. I wasn't enjoying my work as a result. And on top of that, because of retail being retail, my life wasn't great either, because I was always working, feeling burnt out, having arguments with people that were important to me because of that conflict that you're tied to your retail job. But at the same time, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So a standard week for me would get to, maybe I've had a bad Saturday, get to Sunday, and I'd jump on a job search website and apply for anything that looks interesting. How many of you have been through that experience yourself? You've just gone, right, I'm done with this. I'm going to apply. I'm going to do something different. And generally that happens in January or February after Christmas. People decide it's about time to do something different. And that's exactly the place that I was in. I applied for hundreds of jobs and heard back from none of them. And and I probably went through this cycle for 3 or 4. After doing about 10 years, probably another 2-3 years, I went through this vicious cycle of saying, I'm done with it, applying for jobs or thinking I'm going to do something different. And Christmas comes around again and going, right, this year's going to be my year. After another spout of rejections, I decided to change my approach. And this came about a bit randomly, to be fair. I started doing a bit of personal development. I started to learn linguistic programming, NLP for short, which is just a little bit around. And it was something I just thought I'd do to enhance my coaching and leadership skills because I found it really interesting. And what I learned during that was something really basic, but just about people's belief system, why people believe certain things to be true and how those beliefs are formed. And I for those years of rejection of making applications, getting that sorry you've been unsuccessful email back, I'd built up a belief that I could not secure out of retail. I'd applied for jobs that I thought I was more than qualified for, leadership and management positions, and I was hearing nothing back. And maybe that's where I belong and that's where I've got to be. But NLP helped me understand that you want to be following in people's footsteps. Yeah, if you want to change your beliefs, then you need to, not only do you need to hang around with people that have got different beliefs to you, but you need to understand where their beliefs are formed from. So I changed my approach and I started to reach out to people that successfully changed careers from retail. I'd learned from people that had gone and done the leap that I wanted to make. And I started to experience patterns and similar patterns that people had been through and processes they had used to make that career change. And after probably spending 2 to 3 months of speaking to people, really understanding what it took to change careers, and I won't spoil the lessons learned. We'll cover that through this Ask Me Anything throughout some of the questions in terms of that learning experience. I started to deploy some of those tactics people had used to change careers, and I successfully secured an interview in another industry, which was a non-profit industry here in the UK. Nothing like retail. It was a supporting unemployed people back into work, and it was an area manager position, and it didn't require me to take a pay cut. It was a completely different industry. And what I'm going to cover through some of my questions today is, or for some of the questions that I've received and some of the bits I want to make sure I cover why I've got you with me, is what I learned, what it took to go from year after year of rejection to successfully securing a career in another industry and without having to take a pay cut, without starting again. How I turned hundreds of applications into actually securing interviews for pretty much every 3 jobs I applied for. I was getting 1 interview, and I'm sure, although that's not, I'm not going to sit here and promise that you can have 100% success rate at applications to interviews, but I'm sure actually if I could guarantee that you applied for 3 jobs and one of them was going to guarantee you an interview, I think you'd probably snap my hands off to secure that interview. Because as most of us know from a retail point of view, the biggest challenge is just getting in front of a hiring manager. We know as people, as people, and the experience that we've got, we can probably talk ourselves into the job once we get in front of someone. It's just having that break. It's taking a chance on us. And I'm going to walk you through some of those key points today, along with answering several questions that have already been sent to me via email. So thank you to all of those that have sent me questions. So that's a little bit of a backstory. In terms of how I came about doing what I'm physically doing now, is when I had escaped retail myself, a lot of the people that work for Sainsbury's, for other industries, other retailers, they reached out to me to ask me how I'd done it. So a lot of people that I worked for at Sainsbury's at the time were just like, how did you make the leap? How did you jump into another industry? And I just started helping them. And it was just helping people do their CVs, or for those of you in the US, a resume. I started teaching them some of the skills that I'd learned from speaking to others myself. And one by one, more and more people started to escape retail. And someone said, maybe you should just maybe you should just help people do this and make a career out of it. And that's pretty much what I'm doing now. I am the person that I wish I had when I wanted to break that relentless cycle of applying for jobs and hearing nothing back. And that's pretty much why I do what I do now, because I know that every retail manager, if you are thinking about changing careers and you want to change careers, you can break that cycle and I can help you do it. So that's a little bit about me. And hopefully some of those bits resonated with you. Because I hear a lot of the same challenges that people face in terms of feeling stuck, feeling trapped by their salary, not really being able to see a way forward. And it's that not being able to see a way forward is the reason why I created this guide. I could give you all the steps. I've been through many years of creating an all complete system that has everything to go from having no idea to securing interviews in other industries. But being really transparent, I found that puts a lot of people off, because there's a lot of steps. When you're working in retail, I know exactly what I, you don't have enough time in the day as it is. You are extremely busy. You might only have 30 minutes here and there to work on your career change. There's a lot going on. You've spent years and years building up a belief system potentially that you can't even change careers, and it's not possible. It's not going to happen overnight. And when someone maybe says, yeah, I've got a complete career system, here's what you can do to change careers, this is all the work you've got to put in, I understand why people are often overwhelmed and might not jump into those kinds of things. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different with this 36 industries guide. I can go, actually, as opposed to giving you the complete system, let me give you the first step. And the first step is clarity. So it probably leads me on to the first point. If you are someone sitting on this call, and maybe you have that belief that you don't think you could secure something in another industry, you've got to think back to where that belief comes from, and the chances are it comes back from some of the things I've mentioned already. That belief either comes from the fact that you just don't think it's possible, maybe the stigma around retail, that people just view retail as not as serious as some of the other industries. Maybe it's you've not tried to apply for anything at all up to this point in time, and you just hold that belief that maybe people just don't take retail seriously, maybe because of people putting TV shows or just the general perception, or maybe it's because we know that it's very hard to understand retail unless you've worked in retail. It's very hard to explain what it is that we do, and maybe that belief comes out through that. Or maybe up to this point you've applied for jobs that I had and heard nothing back. But one way or the other, that belief, that the only way you're going to overcome that belief and change your belief is by getting clarity. And that is the single-handedly thing that changed my approach. So what I learned from being constantly rejected up to actually securing jobs was working on gaining clarity. And if you haven't got that clarity is that you know exactly the type of jobs you want to target, and you know exactly the type of companies that you want to work for, and you're actually working specifically targeting those companies, and you're marketing yourself to those specific companies, maybe in your local area, with a clear approach. And if you do not have that, if you can't say to me, Tom, I'm targeting this company, this company, this company, and this company, then I can completely understand why you may have not had success up to date, or why you might believe that it's not possible to change careers. Because, and I'll cover it shortly, the job market is a challenging place. We know that. I probably don't even need to state that. It is a challenging place. But clarity can help us stand out in that challenging market. But if we don't have it, it's very hard to do that. And that's why I created this guide, to give you a bit of clarity, to give you an idea of what people have done. I've been doing this now since about 2018. So what are we on? 6 or 7 years now that I've been. I think it's probably going to be 7 years next month that I've been doing this for. So I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people and helped them change careers. And this guide is evidence of all the people that I've supported over that time. The real career moves that I've seen people move into, real career moves I've seen people move into who have reached out to me and said they've made that leap. It's built on a foundation of reality. And that should shatter beliefs in itself, because these are real people that have made career changes. And hopefully that guide gives you an insight on why how they've made it, why those careers are perfectly set up for retail managers like you and I. But let me tell you a little bit about the job market itself, and why clarity, and why getting clarity using my guide can support you in the job market. So right now, if you were going to apply for a job, so that in today's world is probably getting anywhere between 80 to 100 applications. And if you're one of those people, we'll keep it simple. Let's say 100. You could be one of those 100 people applying for a job. And if you have just found that job because you're unhappy today and you've gone through job search websites, you may not even know the company or much about them. You've kind of uploaded your standard cover letter, CV, resume to the application and hit apply. You're competing with over 100 people, and you've just made a very generic application. Even if you slightly tailor your CV, even if you slightly tailor your cover letter, that is not going to help you stand out from the crowd. And out of those 100 people applying for the job, there's probably going to be at max 10% people get an interview. It probably isn't even that. Generally, you're probably going to get maybe 5 out of 100 people securing an interview. So you've got to be one of the top 5% securing. You've got to be one of the top 5 candidates applying for a job. So how does a retail manager compete with those hundreds of people? How do I get into the top 5 people applying for those jobs? And that goes back to clarity. Now, pretty much 95% of everyone else out there, even people with maybe direct industry experience for that job that you want to compete with them, they're also very generic. They are doing what everyone else does, what to do. You get your CV updated, you get your cover letter in place, you go onto a job search website, you hit apply, and you hit and hope. And the majority of other people are doing that. But when you have clarity, and so the steps that I take you through the guide is I take you through understanding the jobs that match your skills, and we'll cover that more in a little bit more because I've got some questions specifically around that. You're targeting jobs that need your skills, and then you're targeting companies that employ those jobs, and then you're coming up with companies specifically that specific are in those industries. So yeah, let's just choose non-profit for a second. You might have 5 target non-profits in your local area that you're targeting, and because you've got clarity, because you want to work with non-profits, you can get to know those profits better than anyone else, because you're only targeting 5. You're not targeting hundreds and thousands of different companies and different positions out there. You're going, I want to work for those 5 target companies. And we don't have enough time as it is. No one has enough time. So because you're only targeting 5, it's a more realistic number. Yeah, you could target more than 5, but let's just use 5 for this example. Because you're only targeting 5, you've barely got enough time in the day as it is. But 5 is a manageable number. You can learn about those companies, do loads of research, understand about what they need. You can network with people at those companies, which again is something that I cover in more the next step stuff that helps you maybe secure an interview. It's more about understanding what jobs you can do and how you can get your foot through the door. But having those 5 target companies means that you could be prepared to be the most prepared candidate out of. And do you know what? Just that simple step, just focusing on specific companies in specific industries, is all that needs to happen to put you into probably the top 10. So obviously you still probably need to boost your numbers to get into the top 5 for an interview, but you've already put yourself in the top 10 because you're targeting in those companies specifically. And if you've read the guide, I also mentioned in there that because you're targeting specific companies, you can go direct to their company website. And going direct to the company website actually puts you ahead of you when you're applying for jobs. So if companies have their application come through from job search websites, and actually seeing someone come through their own website puts a candidate higher up than someone coming through a job search website. Job search website is normally seen as a poorer candidate come through because it's come from mass recruitment. Whereas if someone's come through your company website, it's because they've clearly been keeping an eye on your website. They clearly want to work at your company. So then automatically you're kind of boosted. So when you're targeting specific companies, you can go through that route. but also because you are only targeting specific companies, you can tailor yourself and be ready for maybe when a vacancy. A bit about how this works in reality, and I'm actually going to use a real life example. So my wife, I met her in the employability company that I moved into after retail. And she was probably in a similar place that she wanted to change careers. So she'd done a few retail jobs earlier on in her life, in terms of kind of like frontline retail. But then she'd moved into employability, worked her way up in employability, and wanted to change careers because she'd done that for a good 10 years herself. So again, I'm not gonna get her to figure it out for herself. I helped her understand what she needed to change careers. And she had her own target list. So we live in Hertfordshire, which is kind of North London, in the UK. And she wanted to work for local authorities. She wanted to do anything to do with kind of special educational needs. So she had her own target list. So she'd gone up with all the local authorities in our local area. She'd gone up with all kind of specialist training providers, and she had her target list. And one of those local authorities, because she was only targeting specifically a small pool of companies, she was going to networking events. She was talking to managers at those local authorities. She was asking to have informational interviews and having conversations with people to understand a little bit more about those councils and their companies and what it's like working there. And she was getting all this inside knowledge. And if she was trying to focus on hundreds of different companies, she wouldn't have had time, and she wouldn't have been able to spend time understanding that insight and building contacts. And actually, by the time a vacancy came up at one of these companies, she was completely prepared, and she secured a career change herself because she knew what they wanted. So that's just kind of an example of how that clarity helps specifically, and a bit of a real life example from myself. So in terms of some of the questions that I had, and there's a few other bits I want to cover, but I'll probably jump into just some of the questions that people have already asked me, because this isn't Ask Me Anything. And as you can probably tell, I'll talk all day about escaping retail and what you can do to change careers. But let me answer some questions, and then maybe I'll cover some of the other stuff that I want to cover as part of this. So probably some of the questions I've had come up. So Josh has specifically asked, where can I find more professional qualifications, free or paid, to further enhance my chances of standing out in the application process for new jobs? So qualifications is one that comes up quite often. I've tackled it briefly, probably more experience than qualifications in the guide itself. And unless you're trying to move into something that needs a qualification, and when I say that, I mean something like moving into something like medical, or something where you have to go study for 4 or 5 years to get an actual proper qualification to be able to do the job, then qualifications are meaningless. And so unless you want to be a doctor, then there is no need to get a qualification. But that being said, there is a different issue there. If we feel that we need to get a qualification for a job, there's probably 2 problems. One of them could be the job description. The other one could be how we translate our skills. So let me tackle both of these in 2 parts. The first one could be when we look at a job description and it asks for a qualification. So let's say it's not like a medical thing or something where you have to go and get a qualification and by studying for years and years and years. Let's just say that you're reading a job description. Let's say that you want to work as a practice manager. So that's kind of like a doctor's surgery. I can't think off the top of my head what it would be called in the States for those for the US watching it. But yeah, just a kind of a practice manager, where it's like the manager that manages a doctor. Let's say it does say there's a qualification in healthcare or something like that. And you read down the job description. It says that it's desirable, or it could even be essential. Going back to my earlier point around hundreds of people applying for jobs, the world's changed a little bit. So back when I applied for my first retail job, I handed in a paper application. Now everything's digital. It's open up every job to receive hundreds of applications. So what companies have had to do is react to that. And as a result, they have built out these job descriptions that are pretty confusing. You know, there's pretty awful job descriptions out there, but they also now add loads and loads of qualifying statements. And those qualifying statements are aimed to put people off because they don't want 100 people applying. They just want to try and get the best possible candidate applying for the job. So they write the best possible job description and lead you to believe that is the person they're looking for. If you want that person, don't bother applying. I'll tell you this. Let's say that you really wanted to be a practice manager at this doctor's surgery, and it was one of your target jobs, and you'd had a few target, doctor surgeries, doctors around where you live. And as a result, maybe you'd spoken to a few people working there, maybe a few practice managers themselves. You found them on LinkedIn and had a conversation with them, and actually you found out that you didn't need a qualification to do that job. Instantly, that these qualifications are being added to job descriptions to put people off. If you really wanted to do that job, then you'd be applying anyway, wouldn't you? Or you'd be going to the effort to find out, do you actually need it? A lot of people just go, oh, it's got qualification on it, I'm not going to apply. And you rule yourself out straight away, or just believe based on that job description that is what you should have. You're then not going, why don't I actually ask someone doing it whether or not I needed the qualification? And I've dotted throughout the guide numerous examples of people over the years that wanted to do things, felt that qualifications were an issue, and as a result, actually, they put themselves off it. But they never asked the question, is it a qualifying statement? Is it fact? Or actually, is there a way around this for me to be able to still apply? So a lot of it is testing your motivation. If you really want to do it, if that is your dream job, why would you let that put you off? But unfortunately, hundreds of people do get put off, and it's done its job. So the first time sometimes is the reality of the job description is that it's going to be looking for the best possible candidate, but that best possible candidate does not exist. If they already existed, they'd already be doing the job. And if they're already doing the job, the likelihood is they're not looking to sidestep between going, oh, I'm going to apply for that job now, even though I'm already doing it somewhere else. That's not how it works. And then the other point is a translation problem. So if you feel you need a qualification, the chances are maybe that you're struggling at translating your experience. And I think we're led to believe that qualifications are key. I think even that store manager retail jobs, I've definitely seen here in the UK where they say that you need management degrees and qualifications to be a store manager. I didn't have a degree. Hundreds of other store managers and managers that work in retail that I know or have worked with over the years haven't got degrees, but now job descriptions are listing it. Again, that's to try and get the best possible candidate. But again, if you had someone sat in front of you and they went, oh, yeah, I've got this degree, but I've only done a year working with people and leading teams, or you had someone over here that had been leading teams for 20, 30 years, had been managing multi-million organizations and operations, then it's, if you can translate your skills. And that's what I try and get into in the guide a little bit around, again, if you're only focusing on specific companies and you're getting to know those companies, you can then start understanding how you can translate your experience for those companies. So if you are targeting a practice surgery, and that practice surgery, turns over 10 million a year, and there's 25 colleagues working in that practice surgery. And the key KPIs of that practice surgery is response times on the phones, customer service, health and safety of the site of the practice of the doctor's surgery. Instantly, you could go, well, okay, I've managed 300 people. I already manage a 25 mil operation. That site has to be safe. Can you see where you can, if you're then translating your skills to go, well, I am the ideal candidate for this. I've got the skills to do this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this in my sleep. Obviously, you wouldn't say it like that. But you can then start translate your experience specifically. But again, if you're targeting 100 different companies, you can't really understand the nuances of that organization. You don't get time to understand how many colleagues might they have, how much money do they take, what's their key KPIs, what are they looking for in an ideal candidate, what the key skills that you need to showcase, what the key projects and what you have to demonstrate that you've done that's similar to their experience. If you're targeting all over the place, you can't do that. And that's why, again, this is to help you get clarity on specific companies that you can target and understand that. And that eliminates the qualification piece. You don't, like I say, unless you're going for specific company, specific roles where you need to do years in like university to gain it, then it's a translation problem. And so hopefully that has answered that one. Josh, you had a second part of your question as well, in terms of struggled in the interview process to sell myself due to the lack of qualifications. How can I stand out from the crowd? So that just goes back to the point I just made a second ago as well, around the understanding the business and the organization. Speak to real people. You can find people on LinkedIn. The great thing about the digital age is that we're now connected to people online easily. You can filter and find people working at your target companies doing the job that you want to do, and you can ask them ask them what kind of experience, and then when it comes to actually securing an interview, you'll be able to translate that experience better because you've already got a head start and an understanding of what they need. So hopefully that answered that one, Josh. So Gemma has asked, I still believe that I've got to take a massive pay cut to change careers. And I think I've probably covered this extensively in the guide, but the main thing I want to get across, and hopefully hearing it from me is just as strong as reading it in my guide, but you're not paid the money that you're paid. If you are paid X amount, then, and this is the biggest, really is a belief shattering, I really need to help you change this belief. If you are paid a certain amount of money, you are paid that for a reason. You're not paid it because your job title, you're not paid it because it says store manager or retail manager. You are paid it because of the skills that sit within that job description, not the title itself. And it's really hard. If you've only ever been a retail manager for years and years and years, your identity is that role. And it's very hard to detach yourself. And when it comes to our marketing and when we do our CVs and resumes, we just talk about the role that we are. We don't talk about the skills and results that we've delivered, or we don't do it that well. We get hung up on the job title. And then what people do is they write a retail manager CV, and actually it doesn't speak about the skills and the results they've developed as a result of results they've delivered as a result of those skills. So from a pay point of view, again, if you feel that you've got to change, you've got to take a big cut. The biggest issue there is, again, the skills translation, because it's not easy. Learning to sell yourself is difficult, and actually, changing careers, and this is where people get quite hard up on themselves. Changing careers is a big deal. It's not something that actually everyone does. It's hard, and I'm not sitting here saying secure your dream job in 10 seconds. That you've got to put the work in. It won't just accidentally fall in your hands. And they say changing careers is up there as one of the biggest life changes you can go through, from getting married, moving home, all those kind of things. It is a big change. And with all those big changes, you do end up needing specialist people to help you. You get a wedding planner to help plan your wedding, or you get all the professional support and legal stuff when you're changing homes. Changing careers is no different. I'm helping people change careers. It's my expertise that's helping you, and sometimes that's the case that people need. For me personally, I try and put out as much free stuff and do calls like this to help people. But sometimes you just might need, if you're on a certain salary, you might need someone to specifically help you sell your skills better to be able to secure that. And you might be paying a fraction of the price that you're getting annually to be able to do that. And sometimes you do need to invest in that. So I think just in terms of the taking a massive pay cut, You just got to work on selling yourself better. But when you've got clarity and you're focused on specific companies, that should be enough in itself. That should give you enough basis to sell your skills. And if you're focusing on industries that need your skills, and that's what the guide helps you do, then there's a much better match. And you're probably always looking about 80% match. So when you're applying for a job, if 80% of the job description matches what, the skills that you have, then it's a good target company where you're going to. If you are a leader and a manager and you're applying for another leadership and management position in a different industry, you've got a good chance. If you're trying to do leadership and management, and that's your core skill set, which I imagine most of you on this call would have, and you're applying for, let's say, a real heavy project manager role where it's very less leadership, less management, more just on project work, it's going to be tougher and it's going to be harder to secure the salary because maybe you've only got 50% of the skill set. So that's where I mentioned the guide about pivoting, where you might go into something in a different industry where you've still got that skills translation, and you can pivot. You're in that industry and then you can pivot. And that's what I did when I went into non-profit, went into an area manager role, and then I pivoted into a change role, a project management role in that industry, because I kind of just went from one role and then went on to the next natural step in that industry. So that hopefully that, I think, back to the point about taking a pay cut, it's all about understanding your skills. You are paid to deliver results, and your skills are the one is what helps deliver those results. So you've really got to get across if they want you to run a £25 million business, then you've got to showcase in your CV or resume how you've delivered results of that magnitude, and that's what will secure the same kind of pay. So another question, compete with people that already have experience. I've already slightly already in the video in an earlier question, but probably to position it in a slightly different way. If you're, let's say you're a retail manager, well, you are a retail manager, but let's say that you're hiring for a deputy or a supervisor in your store, and someone comes to you and they've worked in retail for 10 years. And let's say you've got two candidates, one that's worked in retail for 10 years, another one that has worked in, let's do like logistics or something. So not exactly like retail, but let's say they've worked in logistics for 10, they've worked in logistics. You've got someone that's worked in retail for 10 years, but the person in logistics, comes prepared. They've clearly spent some time researching your company. They seem really keen. They really talk about the results and skills that they've delivered. They, really knock it out of the park. They put a lot of effort in. You've got the retail manager that is applying for another retail job, probably hasn't put as much work in, which comes across because they've worked in retail. They probably think it's a given because they've already done it. Also, again, I don't know about you, but there's then also the stigma is, why do they already work in retail? Why do they want to work here? Is it because they're not performing in their other company? And that's you've got to sometimes put yourself in your own shoes in when you have people come and sit in front of you. When I worked in retail and even in when I changed careers into a different industry, I often hired people from different industries. When I was in retail, I hired people from various different industries straight into manager positions, because they were keen. They showed the skills that I wanted, and ultimately, if someone's come from another retailer, there's red flags. People don't often make side steps unless there's a problem there. So that's as simple as it can be when you're competing with other people in industries. For those of you that have got maybe you work on regions. If your retail company has different regions, and maybe you're a store manager and you've got store managers in different stores in your region, you see the people that kind of coasting. And actually, would they get hired today if they were applying for another job? Probably not. And that's a lot of things where actually extensive experience in another industry actually puts people off. If someone is making that sideward step. So actually, the competing with people with industry experience actually works in your favor when you're coming in. As long as you've done the legwork and you're targeting specific companies, can clearly see that you've done your research about their company and you've tailored and showcased your skills. And again, you can only do that with really specifically focusing on a specific company. So Frank has asked, what if I leave and realize I've made a mistake? So probably the big old fear one here. So the fear of leaving retail and getting it wrong. And that's why with the guide, I heavily focus on understanding what you want and the skills that you've got. So there's two things around this. You really got to get clear before you even start thinking about companies, thinking about jobs and so forth. You really got to know what it is you want. And that's sometimes quite difficult. What it is that you want next in your career. Why are you dissatisfied? So back to the start of this call, when I was talking about how my life changed and what I wanted was different to what I started, and that's why I felt conflicted, because now I wanted to spend more time with the people important in my life, but I was still doing crazy schedules, crazy commutes, long days, and unsociable hours. And what I wanted was to spend more time with the people important to me. And that could be, that's different for every person. What that could look like is just more structured schedules. It might not be working Monday to Friday. Some of you, it could be working Monday to Friday. Some of you, it could be working specifically a certain amount of hours. But whatever it is, you need to think about what it is you want. And if you lead with that, if you are focusing on companies that are going to give you what you want, then you're not going to make a mistake. Here in the guide, I used an example about coming up with the things you want and then rating your current situation out of that. So maybe you want a shorter commute, maybe you want to work Monday to Friday, maybe you want to work 9 to 5, and they're the key things you want. And then you rate your current job out of it, and probably out of those things, it could be a 1 out of 5. But then you then start looking at this other company that could be another leadership and management role, but in a non-profit, and maybe they work Friday 9 to 5. And so that could be a 3 or a 4. So if you lead with that, and you're really, again, specifically targeting companies, finding out about, you get a chance to find out about their work culture, speak to real people doing the jobs in those companies, you're going to be able to understand if it's the right move for you. And that's how you can avoid making mistakes. But you've got to do the groundwork. You've got to really think about what you want. And really, and this is the fear, this is really the fear piece, is what's the worst that can happen? The worst can happen is you could change industries, not like it, which I very much doubt. I've never had anyone change careers and not like it when they've done it properly. But what's stopping you from going back? Is it retail? Good retail managers are in demand. So what is really stopping? What's the worst that can happen? That you've got to go back? Yeah, you could be a bit, you could feel like you failed a little bit, but that's the worst case scenario, and 99% chance that scenario wouldn't happen. As long as you lead with getting clear on what you want and targeting companies that will give you that. Again, you can only do that by being specific. So Debbie's asked, will employers just see me as just a retail manager? And again, I've covered this slightly in other answers, but a lot of people come to me and they say, the first thing they say to me is, Tom, why will these industries not take me seriously? And you may have come into my world because I put a lot of posts out there, championing how great retail managers are and the skills and leadership and why they're great hires for other industries. But there's a lot of retail managers out there, and you might have this belief, which isn't a problem, but you might believe that actually it's the industry is not taking us seriously. But that's not the right approach. If you think that other industries need to take our experience seriously, you're approaching it all wrong. And unfortunately, it's our job, as candidates in the job market, it's our job to help see our experience. And the issue is, if I'm a hiring manager in another industry, all I might have experienced is doing my weekly shop, or just going into that retailer, and I might see a few colleagues on the shop floor, and I might see a store, and I might see my basket for the shopping. It might be all I see. What I don't see as that hiring manager, from what I understand of retail, is the seamless operations that goes on behind the scenes, the 200 colleagues working 24/7, 7 days a week, the health and safety that goes into the store, the managing of reports, KPIs, stock counts, processes, warehouse, shrink, waste, everything that goes into managing a retail operation. They might not see. They might not see that. I've worked with retail managers where their store has taken more money than some of the companies that they've been targeting, and it's just people don't really think about it that way. And they've run stores that are bigger than the majority of companies out there. But it is our job to translate that. Going back to I'll use another example. If I wanted to apply for a job in let's say I wanted to work in I'm trying to think of something translatable for those of you in the States. Let's say I wanted to work in a logistics company, something that maybe a little bit more stable. Then I would be understanding that logistics company. How many items do they ship out every single day? How big is the team? How much money do they take? What are the kind of scheduling things I have to go through? In an instant, that how I would, because I'm focusing on one specific company, I can then speak to people, understand how big is the operation, how big is their fleet, how much money are they turning over, the health and safety aspect of it, what KPIs are important to them. Is it items being loaded per minute? Is it how many deliveries they're making on time? And instantly I can start translating that into the retail operation that I've run. And I can talk about maybe how trade intensive my store is, how I've seamlessly covered my store and saved money on waste, and being effective on my processes and my warehouse management, and it's translating it. But you've got to do that. If you're targeting industries completely different to retail, it's completely your job to do that, not other industries. And if they're not taking it seriously, it's because you're not making it serious. Maybe it could be the information that you put within your CV and your resume, your cover letter. It likely is just because you've not focused. And every single marketing document that you have has to be specifically tailored, not just to that job title, not just to that industry, but also to the company. That's the level of detail. If you want to stand out from 100 applications, if you want to be the top 5 people applying for those jobs, then you need to be that. Your marketing materials need to speak to that company alone, and that's what it takes. Again, I'm not here to promise you that that changing careers can take seconds, but for those of you that are interested in understanding how to work through that process, you'll see at the bottom a link in terms of the next step. So you've done the guide to understand and get clarity. If you're interested in the whole kind of the next step on how do you take that clarity and then turn it into how do you get your marketing on point? How do you target specific companies? How do you reach out to people at those companies and start getting interviews? And out of every 3 jobs that you will get interview, the next steps are in a link underneath this video if you're interested in that. So in terms of other questions, how do I rewrite my CV so it doesn't scream retail? So I probably kind of answered this one, but again, you probably repeat myself a little bit. You need to understand that company. You need to get clarity on what you want first, and that your whole CV and resume need to speak specifically to that company. So I think I've covered that one in the last one. John's asked me, I've applied before and got nowhere. What am I doing wrong? So if you've applied nowhere before, again, probably similar to the situation I was in when I've applied for stuff and didn't hear anything back. Don't take it personally. And this is what people do. Like, you build that belief up that it's not possible. If you've come into my world and you apply for jobs and you weren't clear on what companies you were targeting specifically, then it's a strategy, and you shouldn't take it personally. You've not been successful up to this point in time because you've been using the wrong strategy, not because there's no value in your skills or your experience for those companies. Yeah, we've spoken throughout a lot of the answers that I've given to some of the questions that I've had around how you've got to do things differently, how you've got to change your marketing, speak to specific industries, speak to specific companies, really have a targeted list. If you've not been doing those things, then it's the strategy that you've been using, and yeah, you shouldn't. That's not a reflection of yourself, just your strategy, and that's half the battle. So yeah, without repeating myself too much, that is I think I've probably covered for a lot of the questions already. A couple of other bits that I've kind of captured that I wanted to cover on this call that I've not as well, is probably to take a bit of pressure off you as well. So I mentioned earlier about changing careers is a big deal, and I think a lot of people get hung up on, and I don't market this in any way because there's no such thing as a dream job. So a lot of career coaches and stuff out there put out there, secure your dream job, and yeah, it's a great, nice little marketing ploy, but dream job doesn't exist. And I think that puts a lot of pressure on people when changing careers. Changing careers is a big deal. It will take time. It may take expertise, and I'm here obviously if you need support from an expert point of view. But hopefully, I've given you a lot of information already that you can go away with and work on. But you need to take the pressure off yourself. Like I say, it took me probably 3 years of really trying to understand, and you don't have to go through that pain that I teach. And like I say, the link below here will kind of talk you the next step in terms of I can walk you through that process. But it's not something where you're going to suddenly have an idea. So that guy you've read, and it's maybe you've gone, that job title sounds interesting, that industry looks good for me, and you might still be sitting there going, that doesn't really resonate with me, I'm not really sure. And that's because we're so drilled in that it's all about finding your dream perfect job for you, and those high standards and that expectation almost kills career changes before they begun, because we're trying to look for something going, aha, that sounds perfect. But if your career situation right now, you're going back to about what it is you want, and it's a 1 out of 5 is your current career, actually a 2 or a 3 out of 5 is going to be a much better position than what you're in now. You're not trying to find a 5 out of 5, and it's very unlikely that your next career move will be a 5 out of 5. It could be moving from a 1 out of 5 to a 2 out of 5, and actually now you've maybe now you've got a more structured schedule, and that's the only thing better. And then next time it could be, right, I'm going to pivot slightly into a more 9 to 5 role. But it's just moving towards a better career situation from you. So take the pressure off. This should be an exciting time for you. If you're sitting here and you've read my guide, you've started to explore what's out there. Hopefully have been given some ideas, some of the things you can do, and I've given you some ideas how to generate those companies. But you're never going to resonate. And let me tell you this, see something and go, that is it, I found my dream job. That it doesn't work like that until you are going out there and speaking to real people at these companies and really getting an understanding of the job. It's just an eye on paper, and you're not going to resonate with it, and that's completely fine. Don't feel like that you're going to read my guide and see an idea and go, it's there, I've got it, I've got complete clarity, and that is it, and that is what I'm going to go and do. You need to take the pressure away from that situation. That gives you your next step, and your next, okay, that sounds like something I could do. Now let me explore it further. And it's when that exploration, going out there and speaking to real people at those companies, then going to start giving you the reality. It's going to help change your belief, because you'll speak to people, and sometimes they will tell you what you don't want to hear, and maybe say that you need certain qualifications. But that's great. That's even better, because you're not going to waste your time on that company or that industry. But until you go out there and have real conversations, you get out from behind the screen and start talking to people. That is the key thing that I learned when I spoke to people made a career change. They didn't sit behind a screen just firing off applications on job search websites. They literally got out behind the screen and started having conversations at people at the industries they wanted to work for. And that gave them inside knowledge for the whole application process. It gave them people that they could reference when they got interviewed. They got inside knowledge, and it allowed them to stand out from the crowd. And that's probably the key thing that I learned. And until you start doing that and speaking to real people, nothing will really resonate you, because at the moment it's just not on paper. And when you speak to real people, you start building that enthusiasm, and that's when it will come. So don't feel like that you're gonna resonate with something straight away. And then probably one word warning is, this is, like I say, this is an exciting time. This is exploration. Don't kill it with logic. The amount of people that kind of start coming up with ideas and then start thinking about the reasons why they can't do that idea. You know, until you've gone to a real person, how do you know that it's not going to work for you? Just because it needs a qualification, don't rule that out. If you can do 80% of everything on that job description, but then it says on there you need a qualification, I can guarantee that that qualification is probably just something to put people off. And when you start speaking to real people doing the job, they probably don't even have that qualification, and that could end up, you know, putting you off completely from applying for that job, but you won't know. So until you start doing that, you know, don't start making logical judgments about things until you've backed it up with real facts and speaking to people. So what I'm trying to, probably the point I'm making here, is people move into a logical stage when this should be the creative stage. This should be the exciting exploration. What have you got to lose? Yeah, you're in your retail job, you've got nothing to lose. You've got some target companies. Your kind of next steps, you go out there and reach out to people and start building real ideas. So just going to check to see if we had any last kind of questions come through on email, but I think I'll probably call the shots on the questions piece and probably kind of lead into the final bit. So, you know, the guide itself walks you through getting clarity on the companies, that the industries that you could work in, the ones that are suited to the skills that you have. It leads you through that journey of, here's your skills, to the type of job titles that you could do, the type of industries in those job titles, and to then come up with companies. And if you are interested, I've mentioned in through some of the answers, the next step. So let's say there's some industries that you are interested in, or some companies that you're interested in exploring further in your local area, and you want to know, Tom, how do I move myself to those companies? How do I reach out to people? You've mentioned numerous times that the single biggest thing is to reach out to people at these companies and find out about, do I need these qualifications, what information to get this inside knowledge, how to position myself as one of the top candidates applying for these jobs. How do I do that? Just below this video is basically a link to my newsletter, which you may have even found me through my newsletter. And if you sign up for my newsletter, it's got information on terms of how you can work next steps with me, for me to help you do that kind of next step in the journey. But like I said, I recommend you explore what options are out there first to get clarity before you move on to that. But for anyone that's ready for the next steps, then the links below this video in terms of what you can do there. So we're on an hour, which is quite good for me. Normally I probably talk hours and hours, but I've tried to keep it a bit concise and not duplicate too much. But hopefully this question and answer is really helpful. Thank you for those of you that sent in your questions. I'm a real person. Add me to LinkedIn, drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you found this Ask Me Anything question, because I do these a little bit more privately, where people don't join like a Zoom call, because the people like to be kept private, that they're not looking for a job outside of retail in case one of their peers from another store drops on the call as well. So sometimes it feels like I'm just talking to the screen. But please drop me a message on LinkedIn, let me know how you found it. If you want to, then click the button below. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the guide. I hope you enjoyed tonight's live. I hope the answers have helped those that shot in move forward. And yeah, I'm going to call it a night here in the UK, probably an afternoon for you, those of you in the States. And I wish you all the best in your career change. And yeah, drop me a message and look forward to hearing your results towards escaping retail this year. Thank you, everyone.